What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Corporate Bartender. Is innovation important to you? Do you need your people to think creatively? Well, we all know that people are messy and change is hard, and getting to those amazing ideas can take some doing. We've got Robyn Bolton on the program today. Never heard of her? You're in the right spot. Robyn is the founder and Chief Navigator at MileZero. She's an innovation expert who's been involved in some pretty iconic product launches. I'm looking at you, Swiffer Wet Jet. She's worked with innovation guru Clayton Christiansen and has a unique take on getting your folks to level up. Innovation isn't an idea problem, it's a leadership problem. Nuff said. This conversation was a hoot, and I think you're going to dig it, so buckle up, TCBers, grab your favorite cocktail, and let's get right on into it with Robyn Bolton on today's TCB.
Welcome to SkyTeam's The Corporate Bartender, where we gather some of the best HR and people leaders to discuss what's happening on the people side of business. Now pull up a stool, belly up to the bar, and join us for The Corporate Bartender.
Welcome, everybody. It is your favorite day in Maya, and it's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's Corporate Bartender Day. It's the 29th of May, 2024, and the 196th time we have convened this group of awesome people. And Ruby, you know I'm going to say it. It's almost June. 2024 is half over at this point in time. We are squarely into Q2, almost into Q3. And I saw a meme the other day that said, hey, just to let you know, 32 weeks until Christmas.
Come on,
and
man.
I was like, you shut your filthy mouth. Today's going to be a fun day. We have a guest. Her name is Robyn Bolton. She's the founder and Chief Navigator. I have questions about that, of a company called MileZero. And we're going to talk all about innovation, the humanness that it requires, and how it relates to working with people in your organization. We will do, as always, our end of show ritual, our funny things, good feels story, and a dumb cocktail. We have some guests upcoming. We will be dark next week, June 5th, because Ruby and I and Lori and about, 8 other people will be in Mexico. We are going to be in Mexico for a music festival and not working. So that will not be happening. After that, though, we got a couple of guests upcoming. On the 12th of June, we have Drew Jones. He's a PhD, and he wrote a book called The Open Culture Handbook, 5 Questions to Drive Engagement. And look at this, Robyn. Innovation. What? Apparently, we're on a little run of innovation conversations. And he has a talk that he likes to give about employee autonomy and accountability going hand in hand. So looking forward to that. Then on the 19th, Scott Moutz will be here. He is the author of The Mentally Strong Leader. Build the habits to productively regulate your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. And I just liked his little graphic with the barbell or the dumbbell and each half of the brain. I thought that was pretty fun. So
mental midgets need not show up.
That's right. We're talking big brainy stuff on the 19th of June. But today is all about Robyn, people leadership and innovation. Robyn is as I said, the founder and Chief Navigator at MileZero. It's a consultancy that works with leaders, medium to large size enterprises to use innovation to consistently and confidently grow their revenue. She's worked with people like Nike, our fellow Louisville, Colorado neighbors, Medtronic, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Curriculum Associates. She's been there. She's done that. She's done a whole lot of crazy stuff. I want to know about the Swiffer Wet Jet too, Robyn. I hear there's a story to be told about that. So
Absolutely.
We had some conversation in the pre-show, but we didn't warn her. Robyn, we dance everybody onto the show here. So let's give Robyn a warm TCB welcome, shall we? And she's dancing right out of the gate. It's a beautiful thing.
Hey.
I love it. I love it. Welcome, Robyn. Thanks for being here with us today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I'm having fun already.
Awesome. Well, hey, we always like to start with a little bit of an origin story. And I don't imagine that when you were but a wee child, a baby child, you said, when I grow up, I want to be an expert on innovation and people and humanness and how all that fits together to make companies better. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got here to be with us today.
Innovation was not my lifelong dream. Mostly probably because when I was growing up, like entrepreneur was code for unemployed. So innovation was like not a thing. Like it was not a profession. It was the purview of R&D. But I realized looking back, I've always had a slight anti-authority streak.
I would never guess with the blue hair. That doesn't say anti-authority at all.
Not at all. So I realized I'm like, oh, I think that's why I do what I do. But how I got into it was, I think like a lot of stories, a little bit of work and a whole lot of luck. So as I was talking about with Mark here, I went to undergrad in Miami University in, between Dayton and Cincinnati. So as you can imagine, Procter & Gamble, big company in Cincinnati, do a lot of recruiting out of Miami. And I did not want to work for them. It was like, they were kind of held up as, this is the most perfect company that has ever existed. I'm like, well, that's bullshit. and I will interview with them and turn them down, and then they won't be perfect anymore.
How'd that
go? Well, I was trying to get a job in advertising. And so when I was looking at my job offers, I'm like, oh, I can make twice as much working in a city that costs half as much. So I'm also going to be practical. And ultimately did join P&G. And it was at a time when they were investing in building their own brands after many decades of not. Mm-hmm. And so truly by pure luck was assigned to a team that a year later launched Swiffer. And then a year and a half, 2 years after that, we launched Swiffer Wet Jet. So I had the great privilege of being part of that team, experiencing all of that. As I say, kind of some days it feels like I birthed Swiffer sideways. There are scars. There are scars, but
they're long. That's an arduous process to do it that way.
It was arduous, but it was an incredible learning experience and tons of stories. And that's where I fell in love with corporate innovation and kind of that, again, that anti-authority of like, no, we can do things better. We can do things differently. Like, yeah, it's a little scary, but what's scarier is continuing to do the same thing and hoping no one notices. So that just kind of launched me into this career in innovation. Had a stop in Arkansas on the Walmart sales team. Then I moved up to Boston, got my MBA, went to work for a big consulting firm, then spent about a decade actually working at the firm that was founded by Clayton Christiansen, who, kind of father of disruptive innovation.
I love
and
him. Should I love him?
Then,
this is a question I always ask people that know people that I have admired. I'm like, so I really like this dude. Is that cool? Because I used to love Elon Musk and I don't love him anymore.
No, it's cool to love Clay. He is, or was, a gentle giant is truly the best description, because he was a very tall man, but incredibly gentle, curious, and he listened to everybody. When he would come into the office, he would listen to the ideas of someone straight out of undergrad and give it the same consideration and thought as, anybody else at the firm. So yeah, it's cool to like him.
I had the privilege of meeting him and having lunch with him with our leadership team many years ago. And he was truly just a gentleman, but just understated and just left you with that warm feeling of, well, I guess it's what you would just said about being heard, about him listening.
Yeah.
But like, oh, wow. I mean, he is somebody I would wouldn't mind working for and things like that. It was really, really sad when I learned that he had passed, but just a very, very kind and sincere, just seemed very genuine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I always said, like, he's the person I want to break bad news to me, is how I felt. Like, that's just kind of,
I love it.
Like, because it was so gentle and like genuine and authentic. So yeah.
So where did innovation become a thing for you on this journey?
It's like it became a thing for me when I was at P&G, where like literally every day was pushing against the bureaucracy and the process and all of that, because the mission is the business. Like, how do we support the business? How do we build this great business? I don't care that the process says do X, Y, and Z. We need to do Z, Q, and R. And doing that is the right thing for the business, and the repercussions on the bigger corporation are like none. And I think in a lot of ways that's the spirit of innovation. Like, we've got a problem, we've got to solve it. This is ultimately what we need to achieve. It all became kind of codified and professional when I went to work at Clay's firm. And that's when kind of the language and the tools and the frameworks and the theories got wrapped up in it.
So that firm is called InnoSight, right?
Yes. Yep.
So innovation is in the name. And, when I think of innovative companies and companies that help others with innovation, like the sort of big pillar in the sky for me has always been IDEO and David Kelly and design thinking and that whole thing. How did what you guys did at InnoSight, how did that compare, just so I understand where you fit in the market space?
Sure. It's a great question. The way I position is IDEO, like, since we were talking about the brain and the little weight in it earlier, IDEO is right-brained and InnoSight was left-brained.
Okay.
Is how I'd say it. So, we both tackled the same kinds of problems, very much kind of user research, empathy, brainstorm, prototype, things like that. IDEO is amazingly creative and fun. Like, I could have had blue hair there.
Yes.
It would have been fine. It probably all would have been blue. So they were just kind of, honestly, I always thought they were cooler and more artsy and more artistic. And over in left-brained InnoSight, we were much more kind of the analytical academics, also thinking about like business model innovation and how do you change your revenue model? How do you adjust kind of your sales and distribution? And so it was kind of that left brain sort of thinking, but, lots of real similarity in terms of what we did and why.
So one of the things that I loved in learning about you was the connection between innovation and innovative ideas and the humanness required for innovation. How did that connection come about in your mind and in your work? And why did humanness become so important?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I, left InnoSight when they were acquired in 2017 and took a sabbatical, took some time off to think. And I was something that had always been in the back of my mind bothering me. It's like, all right, well, The Innovator's Dilemma was published in the late 90s and nothing has changed when you look at the results. Like, there's this whole, the innovation industrial complex of books and experts and consultants. The results aren't any different. So clearly we're missing something. And I don't purport by any means to say I have the answer. But one of the things I realized is that, especially the consulting firms, like, we kind of roll in with like, here's your framework, let's follow these steps. Here's your process, here's the org chart. And then we step away.
Right.
And it's like, oh, it's not that easy. Like, if it was just as simple as, oh, go do this, like, we would all be thin, healthy, and rich. Like, not that simple.
Damn it.
And I know, only. And there are these other elements that we don't talk about, which, and I call this now the ABCs. You have the architecture, and that's what we sell and talk about because it feels all nice and tangible. But you have this behavior that has to go with it and a culture of an organization that surrounds it. And all of these things are people. And so when you look at kind of everything required for innovation, 2/3 of it, it's people. And we are wonderful, amazing, crazy, beings.
Hot messes.
We are hot messes. We like to think that like, oh, I go to my place of business and I am all professional and look at me. And no, we're illogical beings and we are always illogical. And, we decide with our emotions, we justify it with logic. That's just how we are.
I love that you said that, right? We are emotional creatures, right? We know in the workshops that we do a lot of work in the emotional intelligence space. And so we know emotions drive our behavior, right? We feel things before we think things. Feeling things happens in less than a millisecond, and thinking things, it just takes a little while for your rational brain to get invited to that party. So when you're doing a, sort of deep dive innovation exercise using whatever framework or architecture that you're using, how do you help distance that emotion so that you're making the right decisions versus the ones that are just feeling hottest right now?
Yeah. So it starts with the leader, and I don't distance the emotion. We confront it. We call it out. And, usually that happens one-on-one because leaders don't often love talking about their emotions and their insecurities in public. I know. It's crazy.
That's weird.
But yeah, it'd be very brave to do so. I don't want to discourage it, but I want to acknowledge it's very rare. And it's often sitting down and saying like, okay, you have said all these things of what you want, like innovation is a priority and this and that. Let's talk about what your incentives are. Like my guess is, and this is true for most executives, you get evaluated on, did you deliver the quarter? Did you deliver the year? How are you performing against your KPIs? And they're all short-term things. And there's very good logical reasons for that. So you have to deliver these short-term things to get your bonus, to keep your job, to progress in the company. Innovation is a long-term, uncertain thing.
That requires failing.
And that requires failing. And if you invest in it, you don't know if you'll get something. And if you do get something, you don't know when you'll get it. Right. And oh, by the way, you have this finite set of resources called a budget or your head count. And if you take $1 and spend it on your existing business that you get measured on, you know what you'll get back. Like, the ROI, or you think you do. Innovation, you don't know. Exactly. And so it's just like, let's confront this. And the very logical decision you or I would make is like, I really want my bonus. I really want to keep my job. Push comes to shove, I'm going to invest in a certain thing.
BAU, baby, status quo.
Yeah. And that's what happens. The implication of that, though, is you've been out there saying, we're going to innovate. And if people see you pulling all of the resources from innovation, they're going to start like, oh, hypocrite, can't trust him.
Right.
Talking the talk, not walking the walk. And it starts to breed this distrust. And, I've seen cynicism within the organization. So like, let's confront the reality and figure out what we can do. Honestly, juggling all of these things that you've got that, are human worries.
No, absolutely. I love that you set it up that way, because as you were talking, it made me think. I grew up in technology companies and spent a lot of time in startups, and the innovation arm tends to be buried either in product or in engineering or in some combination of those two things, where you have like this core contingency of creatives, right? The traditional creatives, the weirdos who like to come to work at 2 a.m, smoke a lot of weed and come up with cool concepts or write code. And so there's the natural tension between the creative mindset, right? This is the IDEO, the Clayton Christiansen firm conundrum, right? So you said leadership is really important. It starts with the leader. How do you build bridges between the creatives who are like, we can't think, as Mark said in chat, this is the most important quarter in the history of the company, versus we've got to take some gambles and the whole risk return equation here. How does a leader sort of balance those two things, not only in their own minds, but in those contingencies that live within the company, right? The creative mindset and the pragmatic mindset.
Yeah. It starts honestly with self-reflection of kind of getting honest with yourself as a leader. And this is what I talk to them a lot about, usually actually not in the beginning of our work together, because they're like, oh no, give us a process and we'll be all fine. And, so it's about midway through that, like, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to risk? And there are some leaders who, are just like, I'm willing to risk everything. Like, I believe in this. We have to do this for the good of the company. I'm all in. And there are others who are like, oh, I'm willing to risk a little bit. And so it's getting clear with the leader, like, what are you willing to do? Because we've got a message consistent with that. And, usually, unfortunately, like, nobody above you in the company is going to be mad at you if you don't innovate, because you're delivering the most important quarter in the company's history.
Right. So and we could go down the whole Kodak debacle, right? All of these companies that were hugely innovative that don't exist anymore because they went that route.
Exactly. And you can, believe me, I've said it till, I was so blue in the face, it came out my head and into my hair. And people know that, but look at like the tenure in different roles. Like every 2 years, people are cycling through. So, innovation is one of those things of, you plant the tree and someone else is going to sit under its shade.
That's right.
And so it takes a really bold, borderline crazy person to be like, no, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing. And I understand it's risky. And I'm going to do it anyways. And making that choice is so inspirational in a company. Like, when people see you do that, it's amazing how it just changes how everybody works and thinks. It's incredible.
I'm going to ask a question and say a thing. Because sometimes those leaders that do that and have that chutzpah to actually make that happen can be kind of dicks, right? And I'm going full Jobsian here because I'm an Apple fanboy. I love Steve Jobs. I have so much respect for all of the things that he accomplished. And I know dude was a dick a lot of the times to his people. Is that always the case? Are there benevolent creative leaders who have this ability to get people on board and not, sort of get to the my way or the highway point? Understanding that some of the decisions that Steve Jobs got to required that level of fortitude because people didn't believe it. They weren't on board. Yeah. Right. I mean, the iPhone was a crazy leap from where we were technologically speaking at that point.
Yep. So you don't have to be a dick. You don't have to be an asshole. I have a very strong no assholes policy.
Excellent.
And you can't be afraid to piss people off because you will.
Fair.
So if you're afraid of pissing someone off, you're not going to take the risk. But if you're willing to piss someone off and, you have the data to back you up, you're able to explain why, you're not just doing it for, as a boss of mine would say, shits and giggles, then go for. But no, and this goes back to the humanness. Like, everybody's human. Don't be an asshole to them. Like, help them, listen to them, understand where they're coming from, understand that just like you, they too are illogical. But it makes sense to them. So understand where they're coming from.
I love that you said that. You said that twice now. Humans are illogical, and it's true, right? Humans are emotional. What you just said, I think, is a critical skill in leading people. Innovation be damned, right? Just leading people in general. Yeah. And that's the notion of being empathetic, right? Having empathy and being able to appreciate the humanness of someone else's situation. I was coaching a leader today, and I had to give him some tough feedback, right? I did a qualitative 360, and I talked to a bunch of folks, and they don't love him, right? And essentially what I told him was, we got to the sort of nitty gritty brass tacks portion of the conversation. And I said, look, when you get to this level in an organization, you live in the ultimate perception is reality moment, right? And for everybody that I talk to, their perception is their reality. And I'm going to tell you this right now, dude. Nobody gives a shit, right? It's not your problem to defend or explain away why they're wrong. It's your problem to fix it, right? You've got to bring these people together in an empathetic way, because, I'm thinking about this now in terms of innovation, and like the current state of that person's team will create nothing new.
Right.
Like, it can't create anything new.
Right.
Those people that are in that team are living a keep the tip of the snorkel out of the water mentality, right? It's all they can do to keep breathing. And if you aren't able to be at least mostly yourself and embrace your own humanity, you can't think innovatively. You're lucky if you can get your to-do list done.
Right.
So, Robyn, let me ask you this. In situations, because I'm sure you've walked into consulting arrangements where the leader was not the best and the team was not on fire. They might have been on fire trying to get to the door, but they weren't on fire creating new ideas. What do you say to leaders who have to overcome this? Oh, okay, I need to get out of my own way so that we can get to the innovative thoughts.
Right. So, yes, I have definitely run into leaders who fit that description. And what I found surprisingly effective is, with everyone I talk to them about intellectual bravery, there's something about this phrase that resonates with every single personality type. Because, some people are like, oh, empathy is too, squishy, wishy-washy, huggy kind of thing. But I talk about intellectual bravery, and you want your people to be intellectually brave. And that is, helping them feel comfortable expressing their intellect, their thoughts, and learning. And so we kind of ground in that of like, okay, what are the actions a leader can take to foster an intellectually brave team? If I have a really good relationship with the leader, I'll talk to them about like, look, the first rule of innovation is you fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And so know that I love you because you're the problem.
I love that.
And we're going to fix that.
I love the notion of intellectual bravery, right? You're speaking to my DISC C INTJ core here, right? That was like, resonate with me. Yeah. So I love that. I love this idea of, say it again, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. I mean, I'm not going to get exceptionally woo-woo here, but it's kind of like law of attraction, right? don't get caught up in the how it's going to happen. Get focused on the what you want to have happen, because that opens the other doors, right? It's kind of like the notion of the BHAG, right? You have the conversation about the big, hairy, audacious goal, because without thinking that far out and focusing on a problem that's that big, you may not get to the most interesting solutions to the problems closer at hand. Yeah. I love that. So talking about the problem, you said fall in love with the problem. Well, here's a thing. Are we always sure that we're solving the right problem? Right. So productive innovation for you requires something, right? And if you want to fall in love with the problem, what is the thing we need to make sure we do?
You've got to understand the problem. And that takes time. That's the thing. Is that like we are born problem solvers. Like, from the very moment you're born, like you're hungry, you need to figure out how to get fed. You figure out crying gets you fed. We are problem solvers. And to fall in love with the problem, you need to spend time with the problem. You need to get to know the problem. It's kind of like you need to date the problem. You need to get to know them, spend time with it, understand it, look at it from all different ways, meet its friends, meet its family. And that's really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because you see a problem, you're like, all right, I'm going to go solve it. But the problem with the problem is oftentimes you're just seeing the symptoms.
Right.
And you're not actually at the root cause.
I say that all the time. Many times the presenting problems are not always indicative of the underlying disease. Right. Yes. The symptoms, we start treating the symptoms and not treating the disease. And, it's a thing they teach you in med school. That's you have to have that mindset, right? Else you solve the wrong problem, right? And I think as HR people, we operate in a coaching and consultative capacity a lot. And sometimes, we have no organizational power. If I'm the business partner to the chief science officer, I'm just lucky to be sitting there having a conversation with the person. And when they say, I struggle with this, or this is the thing I'm wrestling with, I think a lot of times we go right into coach mode and we start, helping them solve the problem that they've defined. And one of the things that I've learned in my journey is to ask the questions about the problem, because I have gone to the well too many times and wasted a lot of energy solving problems that ended up being the wrong ones. Is there anything we can do or questions that we can ask to make sure that we are solving the actual problem here and not just treating the symptoms?
So the questions you can ask, the 5 whys, like nothing else, the 5 whys are your best tool. What I found, because again, as we talked about, like knowing what to do and doing it are two entirely separate things. Like I know I need to ask the 5 whys, but when I'm in consultant mode, I'm focused on solving the problem and I completely forget to ask.
So what are the 5 whys for those that don't know that are listening?
So the 5 whys actually has its origin, or at least reported origin, in the Toyota production system. And so with Toyota being efficient producers of vehicles, if something went wrong, they would ask why 5 times. It's like, we didn't get the vehicle done. Why? Because we were out of this part. Why? That part? Because and you ask, by the time you've asked 5 whys, you're often at the root cause. And then you can
So it's like being a 4-year-old, really.
Yeah, basically. And so
it's flying. Why? Because they have wings. Why?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Let's Google it. So why, if you ever get tired of asking why, I also love tell me more.
Big fan.
And then, as I learned, letting the silence work for you is how I was taught it. And what I mean by that is, especially like in Western culture, we hate silence. Like silence is so deeply uncomfortable.
So true.
And what I've learned is within 8 seconds, we'll start talking. So if you can sit there and stay silent for 8 seconds, whoever you're talking to will start talking.
It's so funny you say that, right? I used to have a client who, this was early in my leadership career. It was my performance review time, and he was one of the folks slated to give input into my performance rating. And I'll call him KD because that's his name. He came to me during my performance cycle and he said, "Hey, Spencer, I need to tell you something. So you've talked me out of the thing you were trying to talk me into a lot of times." And I said, "Oh, really? How did I do that? Because I don't remember that happening." He said, "Look, I take time to think about stuff, and clearly you're not comfortable with that. And you start," and he used air quotes, "adding value with your mouth. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in proportion." And I was like, oh no. So we actually cut a deal about that silence bit. So when I dumped stuff on him, like I had to, he was like, I don't know, count to 10. So I love 8 seconds because you count to 10, it's, even if you're counting fast, it's probably close, right?
Yep.
And if he needed more time, he would do this. This is our signal. This meant take a lap around the floor, walk out of his office, go around the floor and come back and look in. And if he wasn't done, he would do that again, circle his finger in the air, and I would take another lap because it's so true. People are so uncomfortable with that silence.
Yes. Yep.
And people process at different speeds, right? I mean, I'm an INTJ disc C. We talked about this. I take a minute. I work with my business partner, Morag. She's a DI, and she thinks out loud, right? Which does not work for me. And in the beginning, that was like, we struggled with getting ideas out on the table and new innovative ways of stuff, of doing things. It was hard because she would just rapid fire them out. And I can't even keep up, A, right? And B, I don't want to say stuff that I'll have to be married to at the end of this conversation without thinking about it. So I was stifling my own innovation. I was like, ooh, I can't say that because that might not be right. That might not be sound, right? So when you're dealing with leaders like that, Robyn, who may self-censor the ideas, once we've even got this dynamic established, how do you get them to loosen up?
So again, it goes back to first, know how you operate best. Like I too am an INTJ, and I have a dear friend who is the total opposite, the I or the ESTP, and he stresses me out because like she will just launch into brainstorming, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't take it. But she knows it's like she vomits all the words onto a whiteboard and then she leaves. And then I take it in and process it, things like that. And so start knowing your type and being comfortable expressing that.
Yeah.
The other thing I do, and I do this in all of my brainstorming sessions, is we start with silent brainstorming, which is...
I love that so much.
You know, here's the problem. Everyone gets Post-it notes. Write every idea, every question, every thought on a Post-it. And then we will go around the room in a very orderly manner. Each person will read their Post-it, and then we'll get everything onto the wall and start working.
So I want to share something with you, Robyn. This is a trick. You can use it or you can not use it.
Oh.
So when we do, like, we'll do similar work in that regard, like doing focus groups and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So here's the question I always ask in the beginning. I ask people, what was the first album they bought or first concert they went to, right? And everybody weighs in. And then while they're doing their silent brainstorming, I become a DJ and I just start playing stuff. And what's fascinating is when I get to your song or artist or whatever, your face lights up, your brain lights up, and you change.
I love that.
So that works really well. And then, you know, one of the other things that I learned was rather than having people read things out, we have like blank flip charts up with the overarching questions or the guiding principles or whatever we're trying to do. And I have everybody just smack theirs up on the wall. And then I keep playing music and we do a silent gallery walk and I have them group the ideas together so that we end up talking about the biggest groups of ideas versus, you know, because I've had people decide not to read some of their ideas. And when I went back and looked at the Post-it notes, they were really good ideas that got left out. Yeah. So just our twist on silent brainstorming. That. Yeah. That's free. You can have that. There you go.
I'm going to run with it.
So I know we're getting on the end of the time together here. We talked about humans being hot messes, right? But we have to lean into the humanness to get to these innovative ideas. Are there any sort of grounding principles that we can share with our leaders to maybe leaders who aren't the most human of leaders, to get them to become comfortable and lean into that idea that I need to feel comfortable saying the thing and not self-censoring my ideas so that I can share at the level that you want me to, need me to?
First thing is ask questions, and genuine questions. Like, we can all tell when a question has been weaponized and it's that kind of like, do you really think that's the best course? Like, okay, I know what you want me to say.
Right.
So ask genuine questions. And just start with questions. Like, the first thing out of your mouth, make it a genuine question. And that can go such a long way because people are going to interpret it as like, oh, this person wants to hear my thoughts. This person wants to learn more. This person doesn't know something and I can help. And that simple act of asking a question can go a long way to disarming folks and alleviating their feelings that they have to be the know-it-alls and that they have to be all the answers. Part of asking a genuine question is also listening to the answer.
What?
And not just in your head being like, oh, good for me, I asked a question and they're talking now with an answer, but it doesn't matter because I asked a question. Like, no. Listen to the answer, respond to the answer, build from the answer. And so you've got to listen because it's a conversation. It's not an interrogation.
Oh, I love that. Ruby always talks about, she knew I was going to say this when it came up. Ruby always talks about the concept of being deeply present. And that's really important to her. I'm going to add her in here so she can talk about what deep presence means and just why it's important to her, because we've seen when leaders are not and how ideas and innovations can just get missed, overlooked. Even just basic humanity can get missed and overlooked when you're not deeply present. So Ruby, why is deep presence important to you as a component of listening?
Yeah, I think about this all the time. I love that you said ask questions and actually listen and pay attention to what's happening, right? Because if we're doing something else, if our phone's beeping, Slack's going off, email, and we're thinking about what question we're going to ask, we're not really there with the other person, and we're actually not interacting. I'm doing my thing and trying to formulate my own opinion and my own solution. Yes, I was thinking a lot about while you're talking, just sort of this, what's the skill set of that leader who's really prompting innovation or creating a culture of innovation. So I've heard you say asking questions, listening, it made me think of deep presence, and creating this like safe place. Is there anything else that you would add to that or embellish in that of sort of what are those skills for that leader to create that culture?
Yeah, I think it's those. I talk a lot about, the curiosity, which goes to the asking questions and being genuinely curious, commitment, which is not just doing what you say you'll do, funding what you say you'll fund, but sticking with it when it gets hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard. When things get hard, it's hard. But you have to show that commitment. And I think it's probably the hardest thing for leaders is to know that you're not perfect. Actually be a human.
Yeah.
You're not perfect. You don't have all the answers. You're learning as you go.
Yeah.
But you still have more experience. You have a better sense of what the answers may be. You know who to talk to get the answers. So that's why you're the leader. You're not the leader because you have all the answers. And guess what? Your people know that. They've talked about it. It's not a surprise.
Yeah, they talk about it at happy hour every night.
Yes. So like, just be genuine. Be yourself.
Yeah.
I love that you said that, and you said hard things a few times in that response, and it made me think about the Ben Horowitz book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Yeah.
He's Andreessen Horowitz, right? Big deal guy. It was one of the most interesting books I've ever read in this space about leadership and, thought leadership and innovation and technology and that whole thing, because it's hard, right? Yeah. Doing this at this level and being successful is hard. Like you said in the beginning, Robyn, if it was easy, we'd all be rich, thin, and happy, or healthy.
Or healthy and happy.
I don't know that I'm any of those things. It's hard. Because life is hard and people are messy. And I think that for me is the sort of net here is sometimes when we get focused on ideas like innovation, it's easy to get wrapped into frameworks and ideologies and ways that we can generate ideas. And you said to me in the pre-show, and I just want to put this quote, Robyn Bolton said this, innovation is not an idea problem. It's a leadership problem. And I thought that was so powerful because ideas are easy to generate. They're hard to corral and they're hard to get people to talk about.
Yeah.
It takes an environment where I feel some semblance of psychological safety and I feel like I'm a valid member of the community before I'm even willing to open my mouth and share the ideas that I have. So thank you, Robyn, for underscoring and highlighting the idea that humanness is the thing that matters in innovation. And if I'm going to take one variable of this equation away, it's double down on the humanity to get to the ideas that may change your life.
Yeah.
So Robyn, if we want to learn more or if people want to engage you in your services and helping them get to those life-changing innovations, how do we find you?
Yeah. So go to my firm's website. It's MileZero. So the zero spelled out, ZERO.io.
Okay.
You can read a bunch of stuff there. You can schedule time with me and also, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Oh, one last question. You're Chief Navigator. What does that mean?
It means that I work alongside the leaders to help guide them, steer them, overcome obstacles, take safe detours. But ultimately, they're the ones who have to drive.
I love it. Thank you so much, Robyn, for being here with us today. What a fun conversation. We're going to get on to our end of show ritual, our funny things, good feels story, and our silly, silly cocktail. Today's funny things that made me laugh. They actually made me laugh last week because we had a guest cancel and we ended up having just a tete-a-tete with a couple of folks. So it was fun. So I didn't have to prep funny things this week. Funny thing number one from last week. It's kind of what's going on in my world right now. Enough things have happened. No more things for a while. Thank you. Laurel can empathize. She knows what this is all about. Yeah. Right? I've had enough of the things. This one, I actually told the story of this tweet to somebody the other day. Sorry, X. I don't know, whatever it is now.
Whatever.
This one, Made me laugh so hard. Watched a dude carry a screaming toddler across the parking lot. He noticed me looking at him and he said, "He's mine. I'm not stealing him." And then before I could reply, he added, "If I was going to take one, it definitely wouldn't be this asshole."
Wow. Nice.
I've had screaming toddlers and I've been this guy, and I wouldn't have stolen that screaming asshole either. Hey, my Uber driver shared with me his belief that trends in human society are determined by the government waterboarding aliens until they pick a thing to be popular. And that's why everyone suddenly had an air fryer at the same time. 1,000 out of 5 stars. I wondered about the air fryer thing too. I'm like, I don't even know it doesn't even make sense. You can't fry things with air. That's a misnomer. It's not even a thing. Funny thing number 4, anyone who's ever worked in food service knows that Mother's Day brunch is the worst shift of the year. People are such assholes about everything, which is so funny because, my guy, your mom can wait 10 more minutes. She's used to disappointment. She had you.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, there it is. This is for our more science-oriented people. Bob's my nickname. Robert is my Nicholas name. You know what I love? I love telling jokes that Ruby takes just a minute to get.
It's just like, what? I just can't.
Robert is my Nicholas name. And this one made me laugh out loud so hard. I can't remember if I've ever shared it before. And if I have, just humor me because it's got a bear in it and I love it. It's a bear looking over the shoulder of a man reading a book. Read the part again where she burns her whore mouth on my porch. Because I think we all want bears to be that bear.
Yeah.
Today's Good Feels story is going to get you right in the feels, just like Steve Hartman does. He gets you every week. Everything changes. Wow. I know, right? Gets me every time. And then I can't even talk. It's fucking stupid. Today's semi-quarantine cocktail is Dr. Cat. This is for Ruby. It's a Black Cat cocktail. You're going to need a little bit of vodka, 1 cat named Max, an ounce of cherry brandy. So Matt lives across the street from Vermont State University. 3 ounces of cranberry juice or to taste. So Max started hanging out on campus. He walked across the street and across the quad, and he's a friendly boy. So he's been doing this for about 4 years. He's known as the selfie cat. He gets picked up. He goes when new students come to tour the campus. He goes along for the tour. You're going to need a little bit of Coke. Max is so prominent on the campus of Vermont State University. He's been given an honorary degree. He's the Doctor of Literature.
Yay.
I know. That's a little bit of a dad joke there. But I love cats and I love Max, and I thought Ruby would appreciate this cocktail. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thanks to Robyn Bolton for a fantastic conversation about the humanness required for innovation. It's great to see each and every one of you. Let's do it again in 2 weeks because we'll be in Mexico. And go have some dinner. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you had a good time and learned a thing or two at today's happy hour, please share it with your friends. If you want to join our tribe, head on over to skyeteam.cloud/TCB or email us at info@skyeteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again, and remember, you've always got friends at the Corporate Bartender.